Hi everyone and welcome to this week's Tennis Tuesday debate. If you're a tennis fan and haven't done so already, please do subscribe to this channel as I will be releasing weekly videos. Now, before we begin, I would just like to thank everyone for the amazing reception you gave to last week's video. I did not expect to get over 10,000 views so soon. And yeah, since that video, this channel has gone past 100 subscribers as well. If you haven't seen that video, I'll be putting a link up somewhere up there and also in the description below, so please do check it out. Now, this week we are going to be looking at some tennis records and debating whether or not Rafael Nadal's 12 French Open titles is the most unbeatable record in tennis. Welcome to the sports debate.
Here he is again. That's astonishing. It's absolutely wow. He's taken them apart.
Records and records in general are always there to be broken. However, if you had to pick one that you think will stand the test of time, a record even 100 years from now will remain unbeaten, you can't look much further than the 12 and counting French Open titles won by Nadal. But first, we must ask, why is Rafa so good on the clay compared to the other surfaces? As you know, clay is the slowest of all surfaces in tennis, with the ball bouncing a lot higher too. This gives Nadal that extra bit of time to run around the ball and hit as many of his ripping forehands as possible. Being a lefty, combined with the incredible topspin Nadal generates, his cross-court forehands to his opponent's backhands are very difficult to return. His athleticism and his agility around the slippery clay also gives him a major advantage. Now that we've looked at why he's so good on clay, let's look at some of the numbers. Nadal won his first French Open at the age of only 19 and 2 days. He turned 19 on the day he beat the then number one Roger Federer in that semi-final. He went on to win 4 consecutive French Opens until that shock defeat in the 2009 fourth round against Soderling. Of course, he had some injuries that he cited after that match as he had to withdraw from Wimbledon that year too. This was a massive blow to Nadal, of course, as he was the defending champion after that incredible win against Roger Federer the year earlier in what is still regarded as the greatest match in tennis history. Nadal exerted his revenge on Robin Soderling the following year in the 2010 French Open final when he retook his clay crown. He then won consecutively 5 French Opens to put him on 9 at the end of 2014 after that final against Novak Djokovic. In 2015, he lost his second match and his last to date on the clay, losing to Djokovic in straight sets in the quarterfinals. The following year, in 2016, he had to withdraw at the third round due to injury as well, meaning 2 years had passed without Rafa winning it. In 2017, he came back strong. He won the French Open and he's won it 18 and 19 as well, putting him on 12 French Open titles. To look at it historically now, the second highest most wins at the French Open is of course by Bjorn Borg, who won it 6 times. That is half of the amount Rafael Nadal has won it there. If you look at it through other Grand Slams as well, so the record for the most Australian Opens stands with Novak Djokovic, who's won 7. The record for the most Wimbledon titles, obviously, is held by Roger Federer, who's won 8 times there. And the US Open has been won 5 times by a few players. This is, of course, all in the Open era, is what I'm focusing on. Nadal has a 93-2 win-loss record at the French Open, and it is the most dominant performance on a particular surface by any player. I'm sure we can agree. Whether you're a Djokovic fan or a Federer fan, or of course even a Nadal fan, you cannot deny the fact that this dominance has not been seen before. I would also like to ask you guys to think of this objectively and not, if you don't like Nadal, then don't just diminish his records. I'd like to now look at some other tennis records that I think are amazing and may compete with the 12 Opens won by Rafael Nadal in terms of the most unbeatable. I'll begin with what I feel is the biggest shout, which is by Novak Djokovic and amassing 16,000 950 ATP ranking points between 2015 and 2016. This was an incredible feat. Just mind-boggling, these numbers. To put into perspective for you guys, someone would need to win all 4 Grand Slams and all 9 Masters 1000s within 12 months to break this record. It's phenomenal. Yeah, it was the first time in history that the world number 1 player, his ranking points, was more than the combined totals of the world number 2 and world number 3 players. This was, of course, Andy Murray and Roger Federer. Yeah, their combined ranking point was below Novak Djokovic's 16,950 points. Phenomenal achievement. How he did it was, of course, he won all 4 Grand Slams. He was actually the first man to win 4 consecutive Grand Slams played on 3 different surfaces. I know Rod Laver also won 4 in a row, but he did not do it on 3 different surfaces. He also won 5 Masters 1000s in this period, as well as finishing runners-up in 3 of the other 4 events. Novak Djokovic also won the World Tour finals at the end of the 2015 season. And the fun thing about this is, you know how each win in the round-robin stage, you get 200 points? He actually lost one of them. He lost it to Roger Federer, who he then, of course, beat in the final anyway. But yeah, he missed out on 200 points there, which would have taken him past that 17,000 mark. If you look at the highest amounts amassed by Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal, of course, they did it when the ranking system was a bit different. You only gained 1,000 for Grand Slam victories. But if we are to readjust it into the points given out now, the highest Roger Federer amassed was only... I say only, but he amassed 15,903 points. This was in the 2006 season. And Rafael Nadal amassed 15,390 as his highest. This was after Australia in the 2009 calendar year. It was, phenomenal by Novak Djokovic. And for me, if there was 2 records that I feel are the most unbeatable, it is these 2. I still, however, think that Rafael Nadal's 12 French Opens is more unbeatable, to use the phrase, as it is over it's many more years involved. Someone to beat it now will have to be at the top of their game for at least 13 years and win every single year at a Grand Slam. I've said to you guys before, no player has ever won more than 8 won by Roger Federer at Wimbledon at any particular slam. And consecutively, the highest record of consecutive Grand Slams is, of course, 5. Federer won 5 consecutive Wimbledons and also 5 consecutive US Opens. Rafa won 5 consecutive French Opens, and Bjorn Borg won 5 consecutive Wimbledons. So someone winning 13 consecutively, it's not gonna happen, guys. So you'd have to think that they'd have to at least have a 15-16 year period at the top of their game to amass more than 12 French Opens. Of course, Rafa could add to this tally. He's by no means finished. If I had to put a number on it, I believe Rafa will win 2 more French Open titles, whether it's the next 2 or if there'll be a gap in between. But let's use 12 for now. And looking at the Novak Djokovic stat, look, I'm not saying it's by any means less of a record. It's an amazing record. And a 12-month period of dominance, I doubt, will be matched either. But it is, of course, a year. It could be, one of these new guys, they could become world number 1. And they could have, once the big 3 retire, not really as much competition as these guys have faced. It might be one guy dominating the scene. And he could, pull off the 17,000 points required to beat Novak. For me personally, that is why I believe the 12 French Opens by Rafa is more unbeatable than this record. Of course, it's up to you what you think. Please try and be unbiased. I know, there's Rafa fans and Roger fans and Novak fans who, blindly follow their player. But try be unbiased and objective on this into what you think is the most unbeatable record. This also isn't a GOAT debate. I know you guys love making everything into GOAT debates, but this is just simply looking at how unbeatable a record is. I want to also look at some other records. For Roger, I believe the most unbeatable record he has is the 237 consecutive weeks at world number one. This is between February 2004 all the way up until August 2008. After that, lost to Rafa at Wimbledon, of course. This was a phenomenal era of dominance, guys. 4.5 years he was world number one, and in turn really the best player in the world. To put some perspective on it, the second most consecutive weeks at number one is held by Jimmy Connors. He's going to feature quite a bit in the following stats I have for you. Yeah, he held that record for 160 consecutive weeks. And third is Ivan Lendl, who held it for 157. So Roger came along and he added an extra pretty much 50% onto these guys' records. And yeah, 237 weeks at world number one. Phenomenal. Do I think it will be broken? It's once again hard to say. We could have a new player, like I've said with the Novak case, a complete dominance for a while with no competition or little competition compared to what the big three faced. I know Roger and Rafa and Novak, they have tons of records. For instance, the 20 Grand Slams and so on. But, I'm trying to pick out the most unique record in terms of how dominant it is compared to the others and achievements of others. Another record I'd like to look at is, and Jimmy Connors, like I've mentioned before, he's going to feature in these next two, is longevity record. So Jimmy Connors, he has won 109 titles in tennis. That is the Open era record, an amazing amount. Second place is Roger Federer. He's on 102, so he's only 7 away, 8 to overtake him. Let me know if you think Federer can win 8 more titles to overtake Jimmy Connors' record. Just to give you guys some clarity, Rafa is on 82 titles and Novak is on 75. However, of course, they are 5 and 6 years younger respectively to Roger, and they have a few more years to try and catch up. The second one is how many matches a player has won in their careers. This also is led by Jimmy Connors. He has 1,274 career wins. Second place is Roger again with 1,222. This puts him 52 match wins behind Connors. I personally believe he will break it, as the way I see it, tennis professionals, they win about, the high ones, or the higher ranked players, they win about 50, 60, 70 matches a year. And I believe Federer will carry on playing for at least a year without retiring. So I believe this record will be his as well. Rafa has won 956 career matches and Novak has won 871. So it'll be quite interesting to see how they fare amongst this. And finally, I'd like to look at one other stat that I find quite incredible. This is a record held by Pete Sampras with the most consecutive year-end finishes as world number one. This is quite important as a tennis season, as you know, is a calendar year. And the player who finishes world number one basically had the best season. Sampras, 6 consecutive times he finished world number one. This is a record, and I believe this will be very difficult for anyone to break, simply because, remaining at the top, Federer couldn't do it, Nadal couldn't do it, Novak Djokovic couldn't do it. But of course, they had each other as well, so, that could be a reason why. Second place on this record is, once again, Jimmy Connors. He had 5 consecutive years. And third place is a tie between John McEnroe and Roger Federer with 4 consecutive years year-end finishes as world number one. So these are some stats I gave you guys which I feel are quite interesting to look at. By no means I'm saying that, one record is better or greater than the other. I was just trying to see which record I believe is the most unbeatable and the strongest in terms of if it was to, 100 years from now, will it still remain? I would love to know what you guys think in terms of which you think is the best. For me, like I've said, I think it is the 12 French Opens, and counting, of course, by Rafael Nadal. But I'm sure you all have your own opinions, which I'd love for you to share. I do respond to as many, if not all, comments you guys give. Another thing I would just like to quickly briefly mention on, this isn't a video on that, but from my last video, which was of course, will Novak Djokovic break Roger Federer's Grand Slam count? And I saw a lot of comments about Rafael Nadal's chances as well. Personally, I believe Rafa will also go above the 20 Grand Slams set by Roger. I believe he has at least 2 more French Opens, possibly 3. And I do believe Rafa will win a Grand Slam outside of the clay as well. His last Grand Slam outside the clay was, of course, the 2017 US Open. And I feel this is the most likely tournament that Rafa will win. This year, of course, 2019, he will go into it as either world number 2 or 3. Personally, I believe it is very important for him to be seeded 2 in that tournament with Roger in Novak's half. This will give him a really good chance, I believe, to win this year's US Open. And yeah, I believe Rafa will win a title outside of clay with additional French Opens to put him probably on 21 or 22 Grand Slam titles. I'm of course not forgetting that Roger can also win more slams, and Novak Djokovic is looking almost certain now to add to his tally of 16. I'll leave it here for this week. Please do, like I've said, subscribe if you haven't already. And also I would like to ask you guys to leave some suggestions for topics for next week for me to discuss. I would love to hear back from you guys. So yeah, please do leave a comment and leave a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. Thank you very much.
Game, set, and match. Game, set, and match.